Joe Dirt is a janitor at an LA radio station who is irrationally optimistic and passionate about muscle cars. One day, a program host, Xander Kelly, invites Joe on the air to share his story after deciding that Joe would make an excellent target for his show. For 3 days, Xander and a large group of the audience are shocked and delighted to hear Joe's incredible story of his quest to track down the parents who abandoned him at the Grand Canyon when he was 8 years old. As he starts telling his story, Joe mentions about a girl named Brandy, whom he met in an extremely awkward situation. One day, when he went to rob a house, he sees Charlie, the owner's dog, pleading for assistance. After closer inspection, he discovers that Charlie's testicles were stuck to the house's front porch. Joe calls the house owner to let them know about it, and Brandy comes out. Brandy then offers Charlie some assistance, and over the ensuing years, the three of them spent most of their time together. Joe also claims that the only true friends he ever had were Brandy and her dog, Charlie. Joe conceals his feelings because he thinks Brandy is too hot to ever fall for a guy like him. However, Brandy really likes him a lot and has some serious feelings for him. The real problem in their relationship is Brandy's alcoholic father and a neighborhood bully named Robbie who constantly picks on Joe. One day, Brandy's father kills Charlie after the dog fails to save him when he gets stuck on railroad tracks, resulting in the loss of his leg. The death of Charlie causes Joe to feel that he needs to take up the search for his mother and father. Joe is certain that they are looking for him as well and that they did not intentionally leave him. Joe first stops in a town where he finds work while sporting a sandwich board promoting a nearby dental practice. While at his job, Joe runs into a kind older woman who is about to list her car for sale. Admiring her car, Joe tells her part of his story. Having recently lost her abusive police sketch artist husband to a tragic accident or killing him by pushing onto a wood chipper, she sells Joe the car for the change in his pockets. She also suggests that he hire a sketch artist to create images of his parents to help him in his search. Joe is then tasked with securing a promotional hot air balloon on the dental clinic's roof before he can drive away in his new car. Due to strong winds, the balloon bursts while Joe is still inside the basket and he sails off. The basket eventually hits an oil derrick in the Dakotas and he gets knocked out of the basket. When Joe learns that the oil company pays $360 per week for work on the rig, he takes it as a sign from the universe that he will be successful in finding the $360 he needs to hire a sketch artist. Because Joe is a failure and an outcast among his coworkers, he is fired after 1 week and assaulted by one of the workers there named Zeke. Joe then spends the following night in what he misinterprets as a circus tent. The following day, while still feeling the effects of the insecticides, Joe spends his $360 on sketches of his parents, where his father came to be like Father Time and his mother looked like Richard Ramirez, a serial killer. Joe then decides to use an Indian tracker to find his parents. He meets Kicking Wing, a young aspiring veterinarian and owner of a failing roadside fireworks stand on a nearby reservation, and they become friends. Joe, who appears to be quite an expert on the subject of fireworks, urges Kicking Wing to expand his product line beyond the snakes and sparklers he currently sells. Meanwhile, at Kicking Wings, he finds what he thinks is an atomic bomb and straps it to his back with duct tape. On the day his parents left him at the Grand Canyon, he uses it to blackmail the tour bus company out of its list of passengers. Using the list, Joe hopes to track down individuals who may have pictures of him or his parents. Joe receives the lists, but it turns out that the supposed bomb was actually an RV septic tank and he gets covered in rotting sewage as a result. Joe then joins a traveling carnival as a way to travel the nation and find the people on the list. Back in the town from which he left in the balloon, he meets the seductive Jill, a single mother who shares his affinity for Southern rock. Then Joe goes to the neighborhood impound yard to get his GTX, but the grubby attendant tells him the impound fee is more than $3,000. Unable to pay fees, Joe decides to buy a rusty, fume-spewing '69 Dodge Daytona and informs Jill that his real car is unavailable because he is having a footprint gas pedal installed. He drives her to her house and there they both have sex. After having sex with Jill, Joe learns that she might actually be his long-lost sister and he must decide whether to continue having relations with her. When he realizes she is not his sister, the two engage in some vigorous action. At this point, the movie switches to the present and Joe calls Brandy from the LA radio station to inform her that he is in Los Angeles and that he is sharing their story on the radio. Joe then continues with his story at the radio station. Joe leaves Jill to continue his nationwide search for everyone on the bus list and look at their photos. As a result, Buffalo Bob, a psychopath who wears fishnet stockings and wants to turn Joe's skin into an overcoat, holds Joe captive in a hole. Before Buffalo could flay Joe alive and cover himself in Joe's skin, the police show up and take the psychopath into custody. After escaping from Buffalo, Joe discovers some pictures of his parents' car with a Louisiana license plate among Buffalo's possessions. Joe next travels to New Orleans, Louisiana, where he accepts a position as a janitor at a primary school. He meets Clem, a fellow janitor whose past is a little unknown to everybody there. One day, when a student inadvertently creates lethal mustard gas and the entire class is on the verge of dying. Clem saves them all. When asked, Clem claims that Joe is the one who helped the students in an obvious effort to stay out of the limelight. But at the resulting news conference, Joe tells reporters of his search for his parents and also reveals that it was actually Clem who was the hero. That night, mafia hitmen arrive at Clem's house to kill him. When Joe arrives at the scene the following morning, police have already removed the bodies and informs him about Clem's federal witness protection program. Thinking that Clem is dead and he is responsible for Clem's death, he mourns. But soon Clem arrives there on a stretcher and informs Joe that he is not actually dead but is instead being relocated once more as part of the witness protection program. After that, Joe accepts a position at an alligator farm where he befriends the owner, who took over the farm after her parents were devoured by a gator. She despises the place she lives in and longs for a man to rescue her. Joe dazzles tourists with his life-defying feat of getting his head inside the mouth of a massive alligator. Of course, this almost results in Joe being devoured. After Joe's encounter with the alligator, he recalls that his real last name is Newmaker. This last piece of information reveals to Joe that his parents were from Baton Rouge. When he reaches there, Joe finds his parents' house condemned and uninhabited. A backwoods Cajun tries to tell Joe that home is where you make it, but Joe didn't understand it because of his heavy accent. Joe is devastated, and while lying on the ground and gazing at the moon, he comes to the realization that Brandy and he shared a home in Silvertown and decides he must go back. He then dials her number and hears an answering machine. He leaves a message saying he will be back, but Robbie deletes it. Once in Silvertown, Joe runs into Robbie and his friends. Joe is informed by Robbie that he is going to marry Brandy and that Brandy found Joe's parents in California. He also claims that Brandy withheld information about Joe's parents because she didn't want to see Joe. Joe doesn't believe him, but Robbie shows him a letter from Brandy that claims to have located Joe's parents but asks Robbie not to tell Joe about it. While Robbie continues to insult him, Joe walks away trying to act like he's not crying. After that, the movie goes back to Xander Kelly's studio. Xander is angry that Brandy would treat Joe in such a manner and is adamant about calling Brandy. Xander confronts Brandy about her note to Robbie when she goes on the air. Brandy acknowledges writing it, but only because she wanted to tell Joe in person and Joe hadn't returned home for months. After that, Brandy informs Joe that his parents passed away in an accident on the same day they lost him. She also invites Joe to Silvertown so that she can take care of him there. Joe then becomes a media sensation. Before going back to Brandy, Joe makes an appearance on the television show TRL with Carson Daly. A woman calls in while Joe is on TRL and claims to be his mother. Assuming the call is genuine, Joe meets them at a trailer in Simi Valley, California. The fact that Joe's mother and father are still alive is revealed to him, but they intentionally abandoned him and only got in touch with him to promote their online business. Knowing this, Joe is heartbroken and threatens to kill himself by jumping off a bridge in LA. The crowd and police request him to change his mind and get down from the bridge railing, but Joe says that he has no one and that everyone lies to him. At that time, Brandy arrives and Joe asks her about lying to him about his parents' death. Brandy admits to lying but explains that she wanted to protect him from his parents after meeting them and learning how awful they were. Brandy also informs Joe about her love for Joe and her desire to get married and have a family with him. Meanwhile, a police officer uses a bungee cord to rope Joe and tries to pull him back. As a result, the bungee cord stops him from falling, but as it rises, Joe hits the bridge with his head and loses consciousness. When Joe wakes up in Silvertown, Brandy, Kicking Wing, Clem, and the owner of the alligator farm are all standing by his bed. Based on Joe's advice, Kicking Wing has established himself as a successful fireworks business, and Clem has changed his name and moved to Silvertown. Clem also intends to marry the owner of the farm. The surprises didn't end there. Brandy gives Joe a new haircut and a new dog named Charlie. Joe acknowledges that he now has a devoted family and true friends. All five of them leave in Joe's convertible as the movie comes to a close, leaving Robbie behind in a cloud of dirt and gravel.
Thank you for watching. It may be easy for you to like and subscribe, but it means the world to us. Please subscribe for more movie recaps.